More about that some other time. Many computer scientists from overseas have visa problems. I got into the States by cheating. I married an American. So I arrive in Philadelphia, having failed to get a job at one of the lesser universities here, and show up in Aravin's office and say, "Can you help me?" And surprisingly, he says, "Yes, come and work at Penn." That shows you what state the department was in at the time. And at that time, I'd been working on the linking the mathematical problems of producing phylogenies of medieval manuscripts, which Aravin pointed out was not exactly wealth-generating research. And he suggested that I go and talk to these people in the Wharton School who were doing databases, and that's where I started. And so Aravin set me on my course in databases. I remember a lot of things about that period, far too many to go into, but I remember when it came up for tenure, which was this normally this sort of cathartic seesaw that people go through. For me, it was nothing like that. Aravin would come to me every week and say, "Well, you've got a little more tenure this week." A little more tenure. To this day, I don't actually know if I have tenure or not. And also, Aravin and Susan were tremendous friends to me and to Annie. They sort of welcomed me into their house. We went to see their wonderful cottage at Muncie. And fortunately, there is not a picture, at least I hope there is not a picture, of a fancy dress party they held where they forced me to come dressed as the Viceroy of India. I have to say that, like many of you have observed today, that Aravin has imparted the wisdom of Solomon or Ganesh to all his colleagues. I remember several of these. I remember, for example, when there was this huge debate over what computer we were to buy for the department. That dates me, doesn't it? And I was leading the forces of truth and justice against all the reactionary forces. And he came up to me and said, "Look, don't get too steamed up on it. No matter what decision we make, it will be the wrong one." Other things which I'm indebted to Aravin, never put off till tomorrow what you can put off till the day after. And the best one, actually, is if, as I do all the time, and many of you do, you've goofed off somewhere, and you've sort of neglected your academic duties, and you come back to work and you see one of your colleagues coming down the corridor, you sort of, prejudice used to say, "Hello, when did you get back?" Really, this works every time. It puts him. But I have to say that Aravin, I was with this department for many, many years, and it was really Aravin who turned it round and put it on the course to its current excellence. And it is, as you see now, a fantastic department. Aravin was extraordinarily generous, not to me, but also to my colleagues, by by interpreting cognitive science as a much broader subject than most people, and in particular putting databases. So not only I, but my colleagues and our students all benefited greatly from this interaction with cognitive science. And all I can say, Aravin, is, among the very few senior academics to whom I owe some, you stand out as the foremost among them. I owe you a huge, great debt of gratitude. Very many thanks.
Thanks, Peter. Okay, now the other Bonnie. Bonnie Dorr. Who I'm thrilled is coming down to. Is this for my 3 minutes? Yeah. You got to run back up afterwards.
All right.
No. Now your 3 minutes start.
And for the short people. So I'm Bonnie Dorr from the University of Maryland. I'm currently on leave on a government IPA, but today I really want to speak to you with my university hat. I'm honored to be here at the University of Pennsylvania to pay tribute to someone we all know as the father of computational linguistics, or is it natural language processing, or is it human language technology, or any one of these many names that people have referred to our field. It's just amazing to be here. I want to share just one short story so others have a chance as an illustration of the depth of the impact that Arvin had on my career, but also, and probably without even realizing it, but also on the careers of so many people in the field. So, sometime back in early 1980-something-ish, in the cobwebs of my past, I was an undergraduate at Boston University, and at the time I was working on a senior distinction project called SpanTran, which is this really primitive bidirectional Spanish-English translation system. And I wasn't really sure whether I was going to go to grad school. I was sort of exploring options, industry, academia, and I submitted an application to the University of Pennsylvania as one of my very top choices. And so both at the time, Bonnie and Arvin wrote me emails. They responded immediately. They invited me to Penn for a visit, and they were very welcoming. They generously set up a trip for me, and I actually recall that arrangements were made under very constrained conditions, but Arvin was determined to meet with me the moment I appeared in Philadelphia. Now hearing some of the talks today, I'm sort of thinking, wow, I'm kind of like this honorary member of the, Women Rule Club. And so it was really, I remember being in awe that this famous NLP scientist and department chair of a top NLP department was really going to come and see me, and no less on a Saturday night. He actually met with me when I got here, and that was the moment I knew how dedicated Arvin was, and not just as a host to visitors, but as a mentor to everybody that he encountered, and it's just really, I'm in awe. So nothing can match those first mentoring moments. The first meeting with him was very short, but I learned a lot about what computational linguistics was, and also how broad the range of different possible foci are, and also what to look for in a graduate school education in computational linguistics. And the discussions we had that day had a major impact on me. They paved the way toward a much broader understanding of the field than I had experienced in the narrow confines of my Bostonian upbringing. And some of you may know of my background a little, that I really needed to have the basis, the foundation for thinking outside of the box a little bit. So that was important to me as I went to grad school. I did stay in Boston for grad school, but I'll never forget that meeting. I was inspired by Arvin and his followers. When ERCs began, there was the verb meeting that Christiana Fellbaum and Martha Palmer and I organized, another girl thing. And Arvin attended many of these, and we talked about verbs, but we also talked about tags and discourse and annotation and lexical semantics, and the list goes on and on and on. There's a lot of areas that Arvin has touched. So, and also everyone knows that Arvin is an academic parent, grandparent, great-grandparent, and so on. His academic family, of course, is massive, but it really, what people might not know, or they probably sort of know, but they may not know the extent of how far his impact has gone. His mentoring is really a treasured gift bestowed upon many members of the community, not just at Penn, but outside of Penn, young researchers who were lucky enough to learn from him as I was early in my career. So I just want to say thank you, Arvin, for an incredibly positive impact you've had on me and on many of my colleagues over these years. You're really an inspiration to me. I'm honored to attend this very special event in honor of the king of our field.
Great. Great. Our next encomium is from Larry Karttunen.
Hello. In the interest of not being kicked out by Bonnie, I'm doing something that I'll never normally do. I'm going to read my prepared remarks from my iPad. So in 1998, I had the pleasure of spending a semester as a visitor at ERCs. That's how I pronounce it. I may not be right. At that time, I had taken a detour from my early life as a semanticist into finite state morphology. So that spring, I taught a course on that topic, on the application of finite state transducers to morphology and parsing. And I was extremely surprised that Arvin came to many of my lectures. I would not have guessed that he would have any interest in that kind of thing, so far removed from tags, discourse analysis, and formal language theory that I associated with him. In the beginning, I didn't know that not only did Arvind have an interest in that topic, in fact, he was a pioneer on the application of finite state transducers to linguistic analysis. That was the very beginning of Arvind's career in the late 1950s, when I was in high school. I assume that many of you are as unaware of his contribution in this area as I was initially. So I'll take the next 2 minutes to tell you the high points. In the late 1950s, Arvind and others created the first application of finite state transducers to parsing on the UNIVAC 1 computer. Bob Frank briefly mentioned this project in his talk this morning. It was a revelation to me to see how many of the techniques for robust parsing were already present in this early system. I'll just name a few. So recognizing multi-word tokens, because of, in front of, tagging words by ambiguity classes, disambiguation rules, very similar to what later turned up in systems such like Tagit and the Helsinki constraint grammar. Syntactic markup by finite state transduction, depth-first strategy with backtracking, and push-down store for recursion, default selection of one structure among alternative analyses with option for later revision. In the mid-1990s, just before my visit to Penn, the UNIVAC parser had been lovingly reconstructed from the original documentation with the help of Phil Hopley under the name of Uniparse, a parser from antiquity. That's how I learned about it and I got to run it. The original program was a precursor of the string grammar by Naomi Sager at NYU and many other systems in the 1960s. But by the time I came to the field 20 years later, it had faded from the collective memory. When finite state approaches to linguistic analysis became popular again in the 1980s, the link to the earlier work had been broken and some of the ideas had to be reinvented. In one respect, the 1950 Uniparse system appears totally old-fashioned to most of the current practitioners of NLP. All the rules in the system were written by hand. They were not automatically induced or learned from corpora. Now, from my personal perspective, this is not a defect. In the domain of morphological analysis at least, rule systems written by linguists are still more practical than what can be deduced by machine learning techniques. So I think I conclude by proposing that we give Arvind's Uniparse, a parser from antiquity, the ring of applause it deserves.
Thanks, Larry. I really didn't think he could do it in 3 minutes. You were wonderful. So now we have a little Encomia from Rao Kasaraju, who is Arvind's first PhD student. Somebody had to be first.
I was a student at Penn from 66 to 69. When I came here, I was sure I would work in electronic control systems. That is my strength. In fact, I had courses in engineering physics by Ketterer. Wonderful teacher. There are lots of other wonderful teachers. But when I took Arvind's and Yamada's courses, I changed my whole outlook on research. They taught the course as though it's a research course. There are lots of interesting problems. And when you say simple things, they give you a lot of credit. I remember in his course, he asked whether one-sided context, I don't know whether he remembers, when one-sided context sensitive, is it the same as context sensitive grammars or they are lower? So when I proved that they are same, he spent 5 minutes in the class praising my technique about this type of thing. So same thing with Yamada. So both of them became my advisors for this thing. And during the research, they are unique. You suggest simple things, they praise you a lot. Tremendous. And once in a while, they used to come to my desk and say, let's go for lunch. They were working on these adjunct grammars at that time. I played such a little role in their research, but when they first published their paper in 69 SWOT, that is the Fox, they included me as a co-author of that first paper, Yamada, Joshi, and myself. And when I had a paper in 69 Fox, they said, you have to have it as a single author paper. That was a mistake. I should have included them also. So they were always very, very generous to the students. They always treated students as their equals rather than as the subordinates. So and I have to tell you one thing that happened at Fox 69. That was the first paper I presented at any conference, 25 minutes for each presentation. I was not well prepared. My talk finished in 15 minutes. So I was supposed to sit there. I was so confused because everyone was taking 26, 27 minutes. I came this side and sat next to Hartmanis. He tapped on my shoulder and he said, you gave a nice talk. And then at coffee break, Arvind comes and says, you gave the best talk. I was feeling sick of this thing that I missed most of this thing. It is the same idea. He is so supportive of students at that time. Let me see whether, another thing. At my thesis defense, the Yamada could not be around because he was getting married or something like this. So Arvind was the only one present. I presented my ideas. It went well. And then for half an hour, I think it was John Carr and Saul Gorn, they debated whether the preposition in my title should be on or by. So it went on. I was thinking I failed this exam. So the exam was finished. They excused me. They came back. And they come and say, oh, you did spectacularly well. I asked Arvind, what should I do with the title? He says, whatever you like, you just keep it. So that is his attitude. So unrelated to this, I want to tell you this story. It has nothing to do with Arvind, but I think it's a very funny story. They always encourage students to go to conferences, as one of you mentioned. In 69, they took me and another grad student to Fox conference. And my classmate came to the conference without any money in his pocket. So we went to dinner. I paid $18 for that dinner. And my office mate, who happens to be my friend's roommate, was pushing me to go and collect my $18. I didn't want to, but I don't want to say who that one is. So one day, my office mate was pushing me, and my friend walked in and he said, Rao, do I owe you some money? Normally, I would say I don't remember. But the fellow behind me will kill me if I say I don't remember. I said, yes. Then he said, I'm going to girls down for lunch. Can you give me $2? I will give you $20. So I have not seen the $20 to this day.
Thanks, Rao. Kathy, we're going to see you in person now after having seen so many pictures of you. So our next encomium is from Kathy McCoy from the University of Delaware.
My daughter enjoyed the picture. She's looking at my pants going, what? What are you doing? Aravind, there's just so much that you have done for me over the years, and I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. So many of the people here have talked about, and I've been reminded by this today, the unbelievable atmosphere that you created here for us. All the visitors you brought in, everything that you did for us, it was a fabulous environment and one I would love to emulate, but I don't know how. The gentle support and understanding that you gave us was unwavering. For me, I found that I was pregnant in the middle of my studies, and I was so scared to tell Aravind. I thought, oh, geez. I had been working on object-related misconceptions for my... And one day, walking back from the Sloan talks, I got up enough nerve, and I said, Aravind, I'm going to have a baby. And I'm scared. And he says, well, I guess it wasn't a misconception, was it? So he wasn't mad at me. He was happy for me. But what he was understanding, we've talked about the women thing, but it was real. He said to me, you're going to need some help. I'm going to give you a long-distance phone line because I know you can't afford it. I'm going to give you a computer and a modem. It was a long time ago. We had that phone thing. He set me up so that I would be able to do work from home. And he also encouraged me when my son was like a super baby who would just love to be held and would sleep. And when he was very young, he came into school with me, and I would put him in those sacks and go to talks and stuff. And Aravind took the time to tell me what a great job I was doing and how wonderful it was. And that was everything. That made so much difference to me. So I really appreciate it. Let me see. He taught me how to travel. Shamala? Yeah. I don't know. One of the first traveling that we did, it was you and me and Aravind, and we were in some foreign country. And I remember him sitting down, and he was, of course, teaching you, but I was sitting right there, too, learning how to count the money and how to get back. To this day, I take something from the hotel, because that's what he said. When you go out of the hotel, take something so you can hand it to the taxi driver. It was great. The support and unending support, but making us stand on our own 2 feet. Another thing that sticks out unbelievably with me was one day I walked into Arvind's office, and I'd been there a while at that point, and I said, Aravind, I think it's time I graduate. And he looks at me and he said, I wondered when you were going to tell me that. I thought, could I have come in a year ago and said this? But he made me decide. He made me find it out. And what was even more amazing to me was I traveled with him a year after I had graduated, so I had been teaching a year. And I gave a talk at a workshop, and he came running up to me after the talk and said, I believe you now. I believe. And I thought, didn't you sign? Like, what? I don't get it. So he didn't believe me, but he still thought, all right, she's done. Get her out. So, at any rate, all of this stuff has really just, I think, made me be able to stand on my own feet and come back to you time and time again for advice. It is just so wonderful, and I appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. Fernando Pereira, he's up there. Come on down and say something.
Hi, it's really, really, really nice to be back. So when Bonnie asked me to speak here, I was thinking, well, how long have I known Aravind? And I remembered, actually, there was a really distinctive memory for me at ACL 1983. So I had just come to the United States. I was at SRI. And there was, at the time, there was a lot of controversy within the computational linguistic field between different approaches to formal grammar. And there was sort of very controversial talks and sort of heated discussions. And after one of those, I saw there was this big group of people around this person I didn't know, this older gentleman, and they all talking. And Stuart was one of them. And I came along and say, what's going on here? And that's when I met Aravind. He probably doesn't remember. What struck me then and continued to strike me throughout is that Aravind doesn't convince people. Aravind persuades very subtly over a long period of time. The strength of persistence of pushing gently in the right direction over decades overcomes many heated debates that seemed very important in 1983, but turned out to be probably pretty spurious in the most part. I saw that later as the field made this very complicated and also acrimonious transition from a sort of a rule-based approaches to more statistical machine learning approaches. In that, again, people took sides, and there was a lot of argument, and a lot of controversy and unnecessary friction, and it's so easy to fall in one side or another. And throughout this whole process, Aravind was always involved in a subtle, indirect way in encouraging good work wherever it came from, rather than saying this is the party line, this is where what we should follow. And that's a type of leadership that's very rare and actually quite unique to our field, and made a huge difference for many of us, certainly for me, in making us a little bit more open to different approaches. Now, when it was finally, many years later, when I came to Penn, Aravind was really instrumental in convincing me to come and also opening the doors in ways that were extremely important, in particular in funding, in bringing me into a pair of very interesting grants, combining computational linguistics and biology that I was then involved in. That really, it was the seed money for a lot of the work I did and the students that I trained here. And again, in that work, Aravind was not saying this is what we should do. He was kind of responding to what people were doing, was suggesting ideas and providing interesting suggestions and commentaries that often were unexpected. And that was, once again, the sort of this steady, long-term influence and highlighting what good work is and giving by example what you cannot give by telling people. A final remark I'd like to make is when I went to California, checking out Google, at some point, I can't remember the exact date because a lot of my stuff is still in boxes, surprisingly. Aravind sent me a handwritten note, basically trying to convince me to come back and saying really, really nice things about my work and my work here at Penn. And this is really remarkable because it was not in any way negative. It was extremely positive and encouraging, and at the same time, of course, making his opinion known, which is I really appreciate. For very complex reasons, I decided to stay. But one thing that, even though I'm not his day-to-day colleague any longer, one of the things that I still think of Aravind many times is when I'm managing a very large team and very complex relationships, is this idea that you don't do it by being in people's faces. You do it by being in the background and showing what good work is. Thank you, Aravind.
Oh, lovely. Thanks, Fernando. Now a friend as opposed to an ex-student or collaborator is Dan Roth from the University of Illinois.
Hi, so this really has been a great meeting, as people have commented. So I'm very honored to be here, and I'm thankful for the organizer for inviting me. So, as many of you know, I didn't really start in NLP. I started as a learning theorist or an AI theorist. I learned about Arvin, actually, from the guy who's going to speak next, Yves Chavez. While I was a PhD student, he worked with my wife at Mitsubishi Electric, and this is how I learned about you. I actually learned about other aspects of you later on when I was at Illinois, working with Cindy Fisher, with the psycholinguists. So I wasn't part of the clique. But after I graduated, when I started in '95, starting to move into NLP, as a newcomer to the field, I was so impressed with the immense influence that Penn had. I mean, everyone went to Penn. I mean, everyone was either a student or a postdoc or visitor. It was really impressive to see the influence of Penn on the field. And sitting here through these really inspiring talks, I have a better understanding now why. I think it's really the environment, the intellectual environment and the fun environment that you and other colleagues have actually created here that drew people here and allow this intellectual environment and so much impact on the field. And in many respects, I think that this had a huge influence on natural language processing. I mean, one of the reasons that I enjoy the NLP community, I think it's really a fun community, a pleasure to be part of, I think is really thanks to this environment that was created here, and we have to thank you for that, Arvin. Thanks.
Thanks, Bill. Okay, Eve, I help you? I can try. Okay, if not, we have help upstairs. You don't recognize him. This is Eve Shabbos.
That's true.
So get out of that, and then your slides should be here.
Yeah, why don't you turn off the screen while I load it? Okay. Thank you. So how do you load now?
Yeah, you were just there.
Okay.
Okay, do you want to?
Yeah. It's a real pleasure to be here, Arvind, and to see you and see everybody else here that I haven't seen for a while. Thank you for Bunny, Susan, and all the community who set this up. This is really, really, really nice to be here, and really, really nice to see you, all of you. I have my name tag here, and you'll see that I've changed quite a while since since I've been here, and it's a real privilege to say a few words about you, Arvind. But at the end of the day, right now, I think there aren't many words that haven't been said already about you, or adjectives. I rewrote my speech as the day was going and scratching every single comment that I could make. So instead of, I think I still will manage to embarrass you a little bit, but I'll be very personal and talk a little bit about me and try to connect with you. Well, so here we are. There are a handful of people that are influential in your life, in your journey here. And besides, of course, your family and your parents and your close family. And certainly Arvind is somebody who had a great influence on me in many different ways. Now, I joined in Penn in 1985. This is me. I've changed. Yes, I have my name tag now. And there's a couple of other people that I had to read their name tags here. And Arvind had made some interesting comments on where we should put the name tag, maybe in the back, especially in this room. Anyway, I won't go there. Of course, I studied between 85 and 1990. Arvind was my advisor, studied in tree adjoining grammars, lexical tree adjoining grammars, etc. And I won't go too much into the details of this. I witnessed the growth of the university, the more school, and the linked lab, and the birth of IRCS, and it was unbelievable. And I do remember also being in a trail as an office when the work was done at the Moore School. This was really fun, by the way, and really intimate relationship with other students. So as I said, Arvind had many impact, a lot of impact on myself, and sometimes he was not successful at getting some influence on me, and this is me. You all know Arvind's style that he kept for the years, and I haven't moved much since then. But this is me after my PhD. You notice the long hair that I didn't adopt the Joshi's look then. So contrary to Bob, I think Bob, unfortunately, I don't know if he's still here, mentioned that he had some But it's starting also. Slowly, I'm getting there. As I said, there's many words that have been said and very few that haven't been said. But one word that I would like to associate with Arvind is mindfulness, which is, and one can only aspire to be like Arvind as a scientist and also as a person. He had a tremendous impact on me, and it's still today, as all of you have said, still has an impact on all of us. And one should be really impressed by the number of people also that Arvind has reached in many different ways. And I wish that we all be as successful to reach other people like that. I stayed for another 2 years after my PhD. Arvind was very generous to host me, and I kept working with all the fun things. And I left in 1992, and again, I didn't go the right way or the normal way. I didn't go to the academic career, but I went to the industry. But this is me in 1992, about to embark, to move out of Penn, and you can see my look. I'm completely, I wouldn't say mindful here, but a bit, what am I going to do working in the industry? There are many things that I could say and many experiences. And another thing that I learned a lot from Arvind is his work ethic and his determination. And I remember a trip that we made to France, to north of France, the Touquet, Arvind had been invited to give a talk within a group of mathematicians, and generously invited me to give a talk together about the triadratic grammars, and to say how determined Arvind was. We flew from Philadelphia to Paris. You all know the jet lag and how tiresome it can be. We just out of the plane rented a small car, one of those old French cars, drove like 3 or 4 hours to the Touquet, took our bags off, and right into the talks, sat down, and there was some students of Dominique Perrin, I think, who was talking there about infinite trees, one of the most difficult things you can grasp, and certainly after a long trip. And I was sitting, and Arvind was next to me, and trying to keep my eyes open. But, Arvind was unbelievable and showed an unbelievable strength. On behalf of everybody here, Arvind, thank you very much. And I hope we have many more time to spend time. And now that you have more time, and really looking forward to see you many, many, many times here. Thank you so much.
Candy, do you want to come down? Candy Seidner, who's now at Worcester Poly. Yeah.
I look a little different than that picture Barbara showed earlier today. I was not a student here. I've never been on the faculty nor a researcher. I first met Arvind in roughly 1981, about a year and a half after I finished my doctorate, and I was at BBN. And this very senior professor talked to me about these ideas he had about centers and inference and discourse. And I was struck by it for 2 reasons. The first was the style in which Arvind presented this was, very kindly, like he really wanted to hear what I had to say about this. And I had been trained at MIT, where, how shall I put it, that was not exactly the style. Okay. The second reason was, a year after you're done your doctorate, you think you've solved all the problems in the world. And of course, what I learned was, I really hadn't. And as we all know, I was right about that. Over the years, I spent some time at Penn through workshops, through sitting on doctoral committees here, and really had a chance to take advantage of the environment that was created here. But more importantly for me was that I got to continue to watch over the years, both here and at ACL conferences and other kinds of workshops, what Aravin's intellectual gifts really were. We've heard a lot about tagging. I'm not a syntactician. I paid attention to tagging just because it was, this lovely formal kind of stuff, which is about the way I think about those things. But when Aravin gave a paper at an ACL, or a talk at an ACL meeting a few years ago about the protein folding work, my jaw just kind of dropped. It was like, oh my goodness, here was this whole other way of thinking about these things. Of course, there's the work on centering, but nobody's mentioned it. I think the work that Aravin and Bonnie and others have been doing on discourse connectives is really cool. And so this is another kind of dimension in which Aravin has continued to explore. So Aravin, for me, you've been both a wonderful colleague through your, what I'll call Menschlichkeit, and also you've been a teacher for me because of what you've thought about and how you've encouraged people in this community. So thank you.
Thanks, Candy. Our final encomium is from Fei Xia, who is a student here at Penn. She's coming down.
It is hard to be the last speaker. Okay, so I'll start with saying that my favorite character in Star Wars is Master Yoda. He's wise, funny, and he can fight if needed, and he gives great advice, and he reminds me a lot of Dr. Joshi. So when I first came to Penn, I thought I knew how graduate school worked. You took courses, you pass exams. Somewhere along the way, you'll find a dissertation topic, you work on that for a while, and then you're done, right? How hard could that be? And I realized that I was totally wrong. And a few years into the program, I still could not find a dissertation topic. And I worked hard, and I submitted papers, and many of them got rejected. So I had a lot of self-doubt. And out of my desperation, I went to see Dr. Joshi. So I said, Dr. Joshi, please just give me some topic. And I promise you I'll work hard and I'll get good results. So from what Bob said, you know what happened next, right? So Dr. Joshi scolded me for an hour. I was kidding. That's not true. Dr. Joshi was very gentle to me, and he said, Faye, I'm not going to give you a topic. You just have to find something that you feel passionate about. Only that way would you be able to work on that for a few years and enjoy the process. So I know that he was wrong. He was... Okay, anyway, I know he was right. So the next few years, I kind of made slow progress toward my dissertation. And from time to time, Dr. Joshi will say, Faye, just slow down. Don't rush it. It's better to be well prepared than to grad it early. So I followed his instruction, and I took my time. I even reserved time to have 2 kids as a graduate student, which was pretty amazing. So eventually, I finished my dissertation. So right before my graduation, I went to Ichikai at Seattle, and Dr. Joshi was there. So Dr. Joshi said, there is this lunch for AAI fellows. Do you want to come along? So I said, of course, right? So Dr. Joshi took me there, and he introduced me to Masa Pollack. She was the only AAI fellow in that room. So Masa asked me, what's your plan after graduation? So I said, I'm going to IBM Research Center. And she said, oh, that's good. But just keep in mind, you should continue working on your research and don't get disappeared. So I saw what she meant by getting disappeared. But that's too late to do anything at that stage. So I went to IBM, and the first year, I was really excited. I was learning new stuff, and I was working on SMT. Then the next year, it was the same thing. And then the third year, it was the same thing. And I was really bored. And then, when you're bored, the first person noticed that, of course, was your husband. So my husband said, Faye, if you don't like it, then maybe you should consider going back to academia. And I thought about it, and I thought it's really tempting, but I was so scared. So actually, I had several nightmares about going back to academia. And what if, my students hate me, right? What if I cannot get funding? What if I'm not a good researcher? What should I do? Then I thought about what Dr. Joshi would say under that circumstance. I'm sure he would say, Fei, you have to follow your heart. You have to find out what you are passionate about, and then you should not rush it. Right? So I think about that lunch, and I thought why Dr. Joshi took me to that lunch. And I knew he took me to that lunch because he wanted to tell me what Masa told me. Right? So that's his way of saying that I should keep doing good research and I should not get disappeared. So throughout my career, every time I run into a tough decision, I think about what Dr. Joshi would say under that condition. And definitely I'm not a young Jedi, and definitely I cannot save the world. But Dr. Joshi, you are and will always be my Master Yoda. And for that, thank you.
Thank you.
Masa Palmer cannot be here, and she wrote a poem for you. So I want to take the liberty to show you this poem. And this long message, I'll skip that. So that's the beginning of the poem. Can I move on to the next page? And that's the next page. Oh, sorry. I cannot read the poem. I mean, you have to read it yourself. Yeah, Bonnie, go ahead.
I can't see it. There once was a young man from Pune with all of the grace of a puma. With courage.
Come here.
As far as I'm concerned, pumas have grace, not grit. I think I'm going to edit Martha's poem as I go through. We'll change that one from grit to grace. With courage and grace, he started his race and cruised past the rest like a schooner. To Penn Engineering he came, lured by news of ENIAC fame. He conquered with ease all theories made of trees so massive the size of his brain. Okay, down. Okay, his skill with automata grew, mildly context-sensitive too. Yet no theorem or proof could keep him aloof from a lass with eyes of deep blue. From Princeton to Penn he sojourned with theories of computation adorned. Sojourned? Adorned? Yeah, okay. Maybe Charles can figure out the vowel shift that we need here. His scientist Susan beside him saw Gorn's wit to guide him, and lo, CIS was born. He proved a superb gardener to be adjoining branches to most every tree. His babies were thriving, his many students surviving and sprouting like weeds, new faculty. Now the awards and the accolades abound. From IJCAI, ACL, and Cog Sci they mound. For advances very big in not just syntax you twig, but also discourse and meaning are found. To JoshiFest Day we have bade him, for Yoda himself will not trade him. Our teacher so wise, our friend in any guise, our mentor beloved, we've bade him.